This is Jill Pack with the Seasons of Joy podcast. This is episode number 153, entitled Happily Even After with Jennifer Townsend. Are you a woman of faith who is struggling to navigate your current season of life? Do you feel like life is just happening to you instead of for you? My name is Jill Pack, and I'm a certified faith-based life coach and a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I want you to know that no matter your season or your circumstance, it is possible to create a more joyful life, and I would love to show you how. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, my friends. Welcome to this week's episode. I'm so glad to have you, and I'm looking forward to sharing this conversation that I had recently with fellow coach colleague and friend, Jennifer Townsend. Jennifer is a betrayal coach, and she helps men and women heal and rebuild after betrayal. And whether this is your situation or not, I think there's some really good tips and thoughts that might help you with something else you're struggling with. So give it a listen, and here we go. I'm so glad to have you, Jen. Would you just take a minute and tell my audience a little bit about you?
I have 4 kids. I'm a mom. My oldest daughter is married, and she lives in Oklahoma. And then my other 3 children live with me. I am divorced. I was married for 26 years, and then I've been divorced now for 3 years. So getting, used to that.
Yeah.
I'm a life coach, which really saved me, and I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
And I love coaching. I love helping people. Things I love fashion. I like clothes. I bizarrely love social media, and I
know you're so good at it.
Making real. I love traveling. I've traveled all over the world with my family, and I've done a few trips on my own too. I love puzzles. Getting divorced, I watch lots of Netflix, which I call everything Netflix, but lots of, HBO, like all the channels. I have every streaming station, and I do puzzles at night. So I'm waiting for my kids. I'll watch a show and do a puzzle.
Oh, I love that.
Anyways, I prefer sunshine over winter. I'm really happy it's spring.
Yes, it feels so good, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm an only daughter. I have 3 brothers. I do have a brother that passed away about 11 years ago. Now, my parents are getting older, so lots of life changes in my life.
Yeah, a lot of life changes. Yeah, I would people aren't going to see you, but Jennifer is beautiful, and when she says she loves fashion, you can tell she does, because she's always just all put together. It's so fun to see what she's wearing.
Years ago, I went to school. I got my degree at BYU. They don't even have this degree anymore, but in fashion merchandising.
Yes.
I was determined to move to New York and, do something in the fashion world. And instead, I met my husband and got married. And before that, I served a mission in Hong Kong. Okay. So I was older compared to the average, right, girl getting married. I was 25 when I got married. So I feel like nowadays that's kind of young.
Yeah. I was going to say now they are getting married.
A lot of people are getting, but back in the 90s, if I was an old maid by the time I was 25.
Yeah, it was
wrong with you.
Yeah, it was kind of that time when people are like, if you're not married, you might as well serve a mission.
Yes.
I don't know why that was the mentality, but that was the mentality.
That was the mentality. Thank goodness that changed. But
yes.
Yeah. So I did a lot before I got married, and I really thought, for me, I was marrying the one. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The guy that I was going to spend forever with.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I wanted to have you on today, because I know you coach women that are going through maybe a divorce, but around betrayal. This idea around betrayal. So I would love for you to tell listeners, how did you find coaching, and, a little bit about who you work with?
Yeah, so in 2018, I was getting divorced, and I had found out my husband was having another affair that was not his first affair. He had had other affairs earlier in our marriage, but of course, I forgave him. I thought, we could figure this out. So, kind of, I for sure didn't deal with it in a great way. They didn't even know about betrayal trauma back then and all the things.
Yeah.
In 2018, I was going to get divorced. I had been a stay-at-home mom, and I decided maybe I needed to get out of the house a little bit. So I got a job at a clothing store, and a friend there who hired me, my boss who hired me, she was like, "Do you listen to podcasts?" And at this time, I never listened to a podcast, and I hadn't listened to an audiobook. I mean, they weren't as popular then. And so she told me about Jody Moore's Better Than Happy. And so I thought, all right, I'll listen to it. And I listened to every single podcast. Whatever, I don't know how many she had done, probably like at least 100 at that time. And I went and listened to all of them. And I felt like a sponge that was just like, oh my gosh, I can think something different. Like, I was so devastated and I thought my life was over, you know, and I just everything I heard was like truth bombs going off. And during that time, my former spouse and I, we reconciled. So we didn't end up getting divorced. And I felt like just like a new lease on life. And I heard about coaching. So I joined her program. I hired myself a coach. And for me, what I started working on, bizarrely, it had nothing to do with betrayal, but it was about my body image because I had such a negative view of my body from my spouse having affairs, from his comments through the years, right? Like I didn't look a certain way, or, having 4 babies takes a toll on your body. So I had such a negative self-image about my body that I was like driving myself crazy. And the thought that I could make the number on the scale neutral was like mind blowing. I'm like, there's no way. But that's really what I hired a coach to help me. Like, I didn't know I was hiring them to help me with that, but that's what I focused on because I just hated my body so much. And I thought, well, if I hate myself so much, how do I expect my husband to love me if I can't even love me? And so, anyways, and of course, I did believe I was, I had to fix my marriage. I really believed it was about me. If I was different, if I was better in some way, then my husband wouldn't be having an affair. And that's sadly how I really believed that for a long time. So anyway, so I found coaching, and then I think just started working on myself, just slowly, really focused. I just started me getting healthy. Wasn't really focused on my marriage as much. And so I think in 2020, the pandemic, my former spouse, he was working from home, and I just thought I had never even listened to the Life Coach School podcast for Castillo, but I thought that's where Jody went. I'm like, I could be a coach. I could help people. Like, if this helped me so much, I want to help people. So I did the Life Coach School, and I graduated, I think in like April 2021. And during that time, I thought we were working on my marriage. Like we were we decided to start a podcast together, me and my former spouse, with someone else. And when I graduated from the Life Coach School, and I already knew when I went into this, I'm like, no, I want to help other women who've experienced betrayal. I'm like, I think I can do that. I want to do that. But I realized in 2021, I was still healing from betrayal. So I kind of was like, what am I doing? How can I do this? But I started my podcast. I was determined. I'm like, this is going to work no matter what. Like, I was convinced I was going to make my marriage work. I did not want to get divorced. I loved my life. I had a pretty amazing life. I loved my kids. They were all happy. Like, right, they were perceived happy. Everyone was just in a good place. Like, I loved my neighborhood. I loved my house. I did not want to get a divorce. And so I was like, okay, maybe I can, just continue thinking thoughts, good thoughts, right? Thinking my way out of this.
Mhm.
And it took me another year of doing my own work, but realizing that, wait a second, like, I can't think my way out of this. And he's not going to change. So I think coaching gave me the skills and the tools to realize this, right? And then I've been trained in my nervous system and trauma and some other things that have really helped me with my own healing. Will also help my clients. But anyway, so it from 2021 to 2022, really that year, I think I knew in my heart my marriage was going to end, but I was I was just still trying to heal, right? And then of course, I was going to retreats. I was trying,
Find all the things.
trying all the things.
Yeah.
But ultimately I realized like, no, he wants this, and it was going to be okay. So we got divorced really quick, like in a month. Once we decided it takes 30 days in Utah, like every state's different. But we went to mediation, we got divorced, told our kids. It was a very like anticlimactic. And in my mind, like, oh, he could probably still come over for dinner. And like, I think I just was still in the fog of not wanting to accept the reality. Like, one of my favorite things I've learned from life coaching is like, when you don't accept reality, we only lose 100% of the time. Like, it's
Yes.
by Katie, and I'm not getting that quote exactly right, but like learning to accept our reality is so important.
Mhm.
And, of course I get divorced. I call her the straw because he ended up marrying her, right? Like this is a whole other person, right? Than all the other ones.
Mhm.
But I thought, you know what? I don't need to be, I don't need that. My kids were older, right? I don't need to have them over for dinner. Like that was so hurtful for me, right? Like I created boundaries. I learned boundaries. I, all those things that we teach our clients, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And help them understand, like, we're not going to change them, but how do we want to change? And so, anyway, so yeah, 2022, I got divorced. 8 weeks after that, my daughter got married, which was really hard. I think I always dreamt of my daughter getting married. And I'm like, talk about the worst circumstance. It just was really uncomfortable and hard. But we made it through, and we're really, I think, definitely more thriving now than ever before.
Mhm. And what do you think that is? Why? Why do you think you're thriving?
Yeah, for sure. All the tools, like
Yeah.
me realizing that it was never about me. His affair was never about me. Understanding that my thoughts are important, right? Understanding that I can think whatever I want, right? I don't have to believe all the things he believed about me. Like
Yeah.
they were just his beliefs. Like
Mhm.
I don't have to believe any of that. I reject most of them, right? I
Yeah.
used to think I was bad at money. I'm like, actually, I'm really good at money, right? So I've just each little thought that has come up, I've just really worked deciding, do I want to believe that anymore? Do I
Mm.
want to think that? And just because someone told me I was a certain way, I don't have to believe that.
Yeah.
So paying attention, how do I want to feel? Right? What kind of wife, or I'm not a wife, what kind of mom do I want to be? Like
Mhm.
I love the world's okayest mom. Like I've embraced that
Yeah.
because I'm like, hey guys, sometimes I'm a great mom and sometimes I'm not, and that's okay.
Yes.
And it just has given me so much more freedom. I'm like, why didn't I know this, a long time ago? I think it would have helped me. But I like that. So just all these concepts that I've learned, I've been able to integrate in my life and just decide whether I want to think them anymore or not, and just really practice, right? I think it takes practice. People want it to be a quick fix.
Yeah.
Has to take lots of practice.
Yeah. Repetition
Yes.
for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. It's such a beautiful story, Jennifer, because it helps you. help your clients from a place of experience, right?
Yes.
Like you've tried all these things that you're showing them, that you're teaching them, and they've worked for you. And so I think that's so beautiful that you've done the work in your own life so that you can help other people. It's so beautiful. And one thing I wanted to add when you were saying something like, what kind of wife do I want to be? And you said, well, I'm not actually a wife. Well, but you could also say, like, what kind of ex-wife do I wanna be?
Yeah.
Or former
Yes.
spouse do I wanna be?
That is
That's
true.
a really important question to ask, right?
Yes. Yeah, no, it is all
Yeah.
those questions are good. Like, what kind of
Yeah.
wanna be? And, yeah, I'm very intentional about, you know, how am I gonna show up? And for me, but not everyone, right? People have to co-parent, right? All the time. Like, I didn't really have to do that because my kids were older.
Yeah.
So, but every now and again, there's an occasion, right? And I just always think, yeah, how am I going to show up here? Like I plan ahead of time. I do a lot of planning ahead of time, especially in situations I know that are going to be hard or uncomfortable. I don't have many, but there's people that have on the daily. I have a friend that probably 3 times a week she has to see her ex-husband. So I'm like, okay, what are you going to think? How are you going to feel? Where are you going to sit? Like, you know,
Yeah.
make a plan. So I think
Yeah.
that's been really valuable. Just learning awareness. Like, I think I lived a lot of my life sadly numb and unaware. I was very frozen. I was surviving my life.
Mhm.
And it makes sense because I had so much betrayal trauma, which I didn't even understand that I had that. And so I'm stressing about, I went one time, I was like, I need to go to a therapist. I went to a therapist. I remember telling him, I'm struggling folding socks. And that's the reason like I was going there, but it had nothing to do with the socks. I was just frozen. Like I just was like, but that's the only thing I could come up with why I thought I needed therapy, which it sounds ridiculous, but I understand it now
Yeah.
that no, it's because I was frozen. I was struggling doing anything.
Yeah.
And so I think being able to being aware, like choosing how I want to feel. And it's okay to be angry. I think especially religious women, we think
Mhm.
it's wrong to be angry or we
Mhm.
have to forgive and forget or we have to forgive and let them in our life. Well, no, we can forgive someone and let them go.
Yes.
Doesn't
100%.
need to
Yeah.
be angry. Angry is good and a good emotion. Like sometimes we have to be, of course, you want to be angry when someone does something like have an affair
Yeah.
or as a child.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to be angry, but then under that anger is the sadness. I think a lot of times people get stuck as the victim in their life. And
Mhm.
I for sure was stuck I was the victim. I was in this victim mode. But once I became like, oh no, I can be more empowered. I can choose this on purpose. Like that was so much more empowering and it really like catapulted me to a different level that things that used to bother me or they don't even affect me anymore.
Right. Yeah. I love that. I think you're right. I think as women, religious women, I mean, we're taught in the scriptures to love one
Yes.
another, right?
Yeah.
And but I think that oftentimes that emotion is meant to teach us something. It's telling us something needs to change, whether it's us or the situation or whatever it is. It's just saying, pay attention to this
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So I love
Yeah.
that.
And anger, I think people are like, well, that means you're yelling. You don't have to
Mhm.
yell to feel angry. You just have to get the emotion out of your body.
Yeah.
There's lots of healthy ways. Like, of course, you don't want to yell or hurt someone to get your anger out. It's not a react because that's reacting to your emotions. So, yeah, I mean, that's another huge one, like actually just feeling my emotion.
Mhm.
So I decided I'm an avoider for sure. I avoid things and I resist them.
Mhm.
Maybe if I don't pay attention, maybe if I don't cry, then I won't really be that upset. But it's like eventually it just comes out.
Yeah, sooner or later, right? Sooner or later. And I've found in my own work, like, just letting the emotions move through me is just it's the coolest thing because then
Yeah.
you realize they can't hurt you
Yeah.
and you aren't it frees you up to experience other things, right?
Yes.
Other emotions. But if you're just resisting the anger, resisting the sadness, it's hard to make room for anything else,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, and you can't feel sad if you choose not to feel sad, you can't feel happy.
Yeah.
Feel numb.
Yeah.
I know that's how I felt a lot of my life, and I
Yeah.
think it's so sad, but I mean, I didn't even know
Right.
but now I know because 'cause I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
this feels." I'm just much more present and
Yeah.
more, like, very aware of how I feel.
Yeah. But I also think, like, there's value in that experience. Not that you love it and wanna repeat it, but how you've grown and your ability to feel at peace and content is amplified
Yes.
because of what you experienced
Yes.
in
And
the other way.
yeah, and, we're put on the earth to have experiences. Like, no one is guaranteed a free ticket and easy we're all having hard. This is just my hard, right?
Yeah.
Some people have health issues. We all have hard.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think, "Oh, that was really hard. I probably am not gonna have anything else hard." No, it's always hard, but the key is, can you move through it instead of get stuck in it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And or, be negative or, "Why me? What did I do to deserve this?" And,
Mhm.
no, and life is unfair. I think we get really stuck. I know women, we get stuck on, "Well, this isn't fair." Well, it's not that's, the wrong thing to say, right? This is just the way of it. This is part of God's plan, is we are all having trials. That's how we grow. If our life was easy, which is the Satan's plan, right?
Mhm.
That no one would have free agency and we would all just make the right choices, we wouldn't learn anything.
No, and I don't think we would know what happiness was,
No, we wouldn't.
right? We wouldn't know what happiness or joy or peace or comfort like, we just would almost be numb because we
Yeah.
wouldn't have the contrast to experience
Yeah. Yeah.
there. Yeah.
And so
So,
we need that to know, okay, but we also can, if we learn how to regulate our emotions and feel them and process them, we're not reacting to them, we're not resisting them or avoiding them. We Our trials, we can move through them much better, and
yeah.
they don't, I mean, I don't know. Every trial is different. I've had lots of things happen to me, and I always think like, "Oh, maybe that's why, maybe that's why I went to Hong Kong and learned Cantonese, which is the hardest languages in the world to learn." I'm like, "Well, maybe
Yes.
I must have learned that. I couldn't pass French."
But you did
I
Cantonese. That's
but
amazing.
I learned Cantonese, so
Yeah, I love
I
that. I love that. So, as you work so would you say your primary client, your typical client is someone that is going through some kind of betrayal? Is that typically
yeah.
who you work with then?
So, yes, and I originally, I was like, "Oh, I'll probably just work with women," but I actually work with a lot of men too, and for me, that feels fine. Like, some women don't like to work with men, but I love working with men just as much as women because women, unfortunately, have affairs as well.
Yeah.
So, my ideal client, and really a client, most of them are either going through it, right now. They've been through it, but they never healed. Right? So
Mhm.
it's like they're realizing they're either divorced or still married, and it's been 3, 4, 5 years, and they still, because what people do, either especially when they stay married, they just pretend they forgive and just sweep it under the rug and
Yeah.
decide it, I'm just gonna forgive him and it will go away eventually, and it just doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so most of my clients, some of them are divorced. So I don't really coach on divorce, right? I know a lot about divorce because I am divorced, but I mostly want to help people heal from betrayal, whether it's going on right now or it was in your past, because I think healing, and when I say heal, I think life, we're healing all the time,
Mhm.
right? We have little hurts, all the time from people and, all things we have to heal from. And so, but to be able to manage so you're not constantly, feeling like you're drowning, right? Which it kind
Yeah.
of people in betrayal feel like they're drowning.
Yeah.
And I, most of my clients, it's either emotional or physical affair. Pornography always plays into it, but there's plenty of other people that are like pornography experts, so I don't really focus on pornography.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're all included.
All interrelated,
Yeah,
right?
they're all
Yeah.
connected, but
Yeah.
a lot of people that are dealing just with pornography in their marriage and their people, so for me, it's no, the emotional affair and or physical affair.
Mhm. Yeah. So when you're working with your clients, men or women, what would you say is the biggest hurdle for them in this journey of healing? Like what blocks them from
Yeah. Well, I
moving
mean, there's
forward?
lots of things. I think
Mhm.
self-esteem is your confidence gets, like, taken out.
Mhm.
You find out your spouse is connecting with another person, it's really hard. Like, some people can be like, "Oh, that's on them, that's not on me," but there's always a part of you that you're not enough.
Mhm.
"What's wrong with me? How could this happen?" Right?
Mhm.
Why didn't I know? Especially people that find out like for years their spouse has been cheating on them and then it gets discovered, right? So there's so many layers of betrayal and it's not even that is devastating, but it's the lying and the gaslighting and the hiding of it that is even more devastating.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I think trusting ourselves, like how, if I didn't notice this was happening, how I what's wrong with me? Like, is my intuition off? But chances are, the thing is, we're wired to trust our spouse, right?
Mhm.
They didn't give us any reason until they're not trustworthy anymore.
Right, right.
So I think those are for sure your confidence, trust, boundaries. I mean, most people don't even discuss boundaries in their marriage. A lot of times don't even know how to I didn't even know how to make a boundary. But once I learned, my marriage ended quickly because I was like, okay, the I don't want a third person in my marriage.
Mhm.
So it was a lot it was easy for me. Not it was not easy, but I could clearly see it once I was like, "Oh,
Right. Yeah, it opened up better view of what
yeah,
was happening,
yeah." I
right?
was like, "Okay, yeah." And so, yeah, so I think those are the main ones. I mean, there's just a lot. Betrayal is I mean, most of us don't know how to feel our emotions, and we're so angry, and then we get mad at ourselves. We judge ourselves for being angry, and so then we step that on. So we have and then the shame. It's like I always just envision it's like a black cloak around you that just holds us down with shame because and this is what I did, my husband feels bad, "I'm so sorry I did this," whatever. He has shame, and I'm just like, "Well, let me carry your shame.
Yeah.
I'm gonna carry your shame so you don't have to feel shame, and then I feel shame, and so I'm carrying the weight of his choices and how I feel." And so that happens a lot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting, huh? Because I think that, yeah, we love this person. We've built a life with this person, and for that reality to shift, right? That's a big blow. And then to not, I think it just to me it seems like a natural response in people that I've talked with is that you blame yourself in some way.
Yeah.
Right? And you said something early like, what was it? Something about the way he viewed you. You just knew, like, if you changed somehow, if you
Yeah.
were better somehow, if you were different somehow, that would fix everything. And I find that fascinating, especially as women, and you would know if men do this too, but that's where we go.
Yeah.
That's so
I for
fascinating.
Yeah, it is. I for sure think it's a more woman issue.
Mhm.
Men men usually react differently, but they s yeah, it is a I think they have a different experience, but men people think like, "Oh, men just leave." No, men still wanna stay married. A lot of times, I would say most people come to me, they want to save their marriage,
Mhm.
and I totally believe that is possible if their spouse is taking full accountability, full ownership, they're doing their work. And I also a thing that I mean, people immediately think we need marriage counseling. We've got to go to a marriage therapist, save our marriage. I disagree. I've learned this because that's exactly what I did. Oh, I at first did go do my own, got a therapist or whatever, but I think healing needs to be do separate until you are healed enough because right when you go to marriage counseling, you can't hear. You're still so hurt, it's hard to hear what the other person is trying to say to you.
Mm. Yeah.
So I call it like the CEO part of your brain just turns off and you can't even hear it. And so you have to be healing, like you have to be doing your work, figuring out what's going on, how you're feeling before you can even come together. And I think people get stuck in, well, our marriage used to be this way. It's like, no, that is over. Your old marriage is over.
Mm. Yeah.
And I like your seasons, right? You're in a different season now. This is the season of we're rebuilding our marriage.
Mhm. Yep.
And so for sure that can happen. And I think it can even happen with just one of you starting to heal, right? Even if your spouse that had the affair, if you start healing, a lot of times people are like, well, I'm paying attention. If my spouse is going to go to therapy, then I'll go to therapy. It's just the wrong way to look at it.
Mhm.
I think it's like, no, you need help. And how can you start healing? Because as you start healing, you can see better. You'll be able to know, like, okay, make better decisions. Because
Mhm.
when you initially discover, people either go to fight, flight, or freeze. Like their trauma, like immediately, like people either want to run away, fight, meaning fight for their marriage, or they completely become frozen and shut down and crawl in their bed.
Mhm.
And so you have to be able to get, you know, a little bit more regulated, get your mind working, right? Or you can decide. But I do believe marriages can survive and work together. And especially if it's not a pattern. For sure, it was a pattern in my marriage. I never saw the pattern until after I got divorced,
Mhm.
but I can see the pattern now. So but there are people make mistakes. People have weak moments, right? We're human. So I think for sure you can work and have a better marriage than you did before because you're connecting and communicating. But also, especially if you're like, have the thought, which I did, divorce is bad, divorce is wrong. I can't get divorced. I want my forever family to, I think, consider what if you could think something different, right? What if divorce is the best thing for you and your kids and your family, right?
Yeah.
For me, I really leaned into that. I finally was able to get there. It took me 26 years to get there, but
Mm.
I finally was like, no, this divorce isn't the worst thing to ever happen to me. The betrayals,
Mhm.
devastating.
Yeah.
So,
And
it,
staying stuck in that pattern, right? In that
oh,
cycle.
yeah. And thinking it was my fault and trying to fix myself and hating myself, and of course that showed up with how a, a mom, what kind of mom I was, which is devastating to me, right? So now I've had to do lots of repair with my kids, but I'm glad I can do that, right?
Yeah.
I can say sorry and I can be like, you know what? I really sucked. I really struggled. It was hard
Right. Yeah.
and it's okay, right? So
Yeah. That's what I think is a beautiful piece, no matter kind of relationship we're working on, is that repair, the ability to
yeah,
just apologize, take accountability, and own our part,
yeah,
and move forward, like, and
yeah,
have real honest conversations. I think that's something I've learned over the last little while is so many of us are afraid of the hard conversation,
Yes.
right? It feels so scary. But
Yeah.
what would life be if we could if we could hold space for the uncomfortable thing that it feels, right? That discomfort. But what could we gain on the
Yeah.
other side of that conversation?
Yeah. I love Jody's like about coaching, right? Saying the whole truth. What's the whole truth? The whole
Yeah,
truth is that I'm devastated and I love you, but I don't want to be married to you anymore because this goes against all my values, all my beliefs, all my,
yeah,
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 like two things can be true.
yeah,
I love my husband and I could also want to get divorced.
yeah,
Right? And so I love with my kids, I mean, that's been for me my greatest blessing is to recognize because I used to get so defensive, right? I was always defensive. And because I was like, I got to prove that he's wrong about me, right? But he had a whole different vision of me. And I was wrong about him because I could only see his good qualities. I was only looking at his good stuff. He was only looking at my negative. And I think that happens a lot in marriages, especially when there's conflict. And so I love the idea of, okay, what part of what they're saying is true, even if it's just 5%. And then, because a lot of times there is truth, right? Like, I can't think of an example, but anyways, I just so not to get so defensive. And now I don't get defensive very often and when I do, I'm like, "Oh, what's going on for me?" Like, I
yeah,
will investigate, right? Like, what's why was I defensive about that? That
yeah,
to be defensive about whatever it was. So, yeah, and teaching my kids, like, you know, I'm a human, we're a human, you're a human, and really connecting. I think we've had some great conversations because they've had to learn a lot of rotten things, hard things about their parents and about, and I take ownership because I was always trying to protect. I thought I was protecting them and our family by, not, hiding what was really going on.
mm,
Right. I was really just putting on this mask. But once the reality came out and the truth, then it's like, okay, we can't hide from this anymore.
mhm. Which sets us free, right? Like, ultimately, even though it's painful, it's
Yeah.
what sets us free, being able to just be honest, and I love what you said, like, you were saying he only saw the negative in you, and you were only able to see the positive in him. Both of you weren't looking at the humanity of the other person. Isn't that like, both of you were
Oh,
doing the
yes.
same thing, but
Yes.
yet it looked different.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
interesting. If someone's listening
Yes.
and they're going through this, they're either in the thick of it and kind of in that fight, flight, or freeze
Mhm.
mode, or it's been a little bit
Mhm.
and they still are struggling. What advice would you offer them? I'm gonna put your all your contact information in the show notes so people can reach out to you. I just think what you do is so important because there are people out there suffering that have gone through similar things that just need someone that can help them work through this in a healing way. But what would you say to that woman or man that's listening and they're in that place where you found yourself? Like, what can they take away from this conversation?
Well, I mean, of course, I have lots of thoughts, but first of all, like, just to have lots of love and compassion for where you're at. Like, don't judge yourself. I think we tend to go to judgment, like, I'm doing it wrong. There's not a right or wrong way to do this. It's our first, right? Like, no one gives you a manual. We don't know how to go through betrayal in a great way. But find someone. You need at least one confidant because what happens, I found, is what I did, right? Is I just held it in. I had so much shame, and shame wants us to hide, right? So I didn't talk about it. I didn't tell people. Now, you don't want to tell the world, right? Or even I would suggest not a family member because then if you do end up staying married, you then have to deal with lots of other issues, right? So a trusted friend And I would suggest, I know in our church, a lot of people go to their bishop or their ecclesiastical leader. They're just not equipped to deal with betrayal. Like it's not their job. They're spiritual leaders, not your therapist. And so using them for a therapist, I just think is not a great way to go. And so finding a coach, therapist, all of it, whatever you can, so you can work through these issues, I think is so important. Making sure you're taking care of yourself, right? If you can only get up, take a shower, and get dressed for the day, that's enough. Right? Just be really kind. You don't have to. I think I know in my past I would cut things out of my life. Like sometimes it's just too much. Sometimes people either go into overdrive and stay super, super busy so they don't have to feel anything, or they shut down. So try to at least continue moving through. And you don't have to decide today if you're staying married or getting divorced. Like there's no rush unless, of course, you get divorce paper, right? Like it just depends. But if there's not pressing, there's not a timetable. You could wait a year, or I just wouldn't put a time on making a decision. You've got to get a little healthier to make a decision.
Mm.
And yeah, I think just lots of love and compassion, lots of knowing that there is help out there, and finding someone that fits with you, that you feel comfortable with, and you feel like, okay, this could be helpful, right? I think finding the right person. And if you go to a therapist or a coach and you don't like them after a few times, you can switch. Like you're allowed to, you don't have to stay with someone, right?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Like, you can take ownership of the healing process.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I would say don't wait for your husband. If your husband's the one that had the affair, don't decide, I'm going to wait for him to take the lead. No, you are allowed to go get help. You're allowed to spend money on yourself for healing. You're allowed to, you don't have to wait for them. I think so many people look outward instead of inward, and just pay attention. What do you need? And a lot of us women, we don't know what we need. And so
Yeah.
figuring out, okay, just can you name something? That's why having someone help you, having a coach help you, you can help identify what my needs are.
Mhm.
Just met with one of my clients today and we went through her 10 needs. I have a needs list in one of my courses. And, I was just helping her identify each thing. What does she need in that? And how can she meet it? So often we expect everyone else to meet our needs. It's like, no, it's our job to meet our needs.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so good. I think that people are gonna find this really beneficial, and I think even if you aren't suffering betrayal, those things are still very worthwhile to
Yes.
think about, right? Like,
Especially midlife women, right?
yeah, like,
Raising our kids. We were just focused on our kids' needs and not even ours, right?
yeah, so taking that time to heal in other ways, right, from other things, and just I don't know, the more I've we use it's so easy to think that if other people change, we'll be happy. But
Yes.
when we take ownership and start making like, just getting self-reflective and deciding, "What kind of person do I wanna be? What do I wanna create in my life?" And just those simple things change our relationships without ever having to change the other person.
Yeah. I always say once you start doing a different dance, the other person's going to have to start learning your new dance steps,
Yeah.
or they're going to be like, I don't want to learn this dance.
Yeah.
So figure out and a lot of times people do come with you. You just have to be the leader. You have to, and I think people are like, well, I wasn't the one who did the betrayal, right? But that's
Mhm.
okay. You still are the one that is affected by it. You still
Yeah.
have that pain. And no marriage is perfect, right? We all have different things that we do in a marriage that we probably could work on.
Yeah. Well, we've created that pattern of
Yes.
dance, right?
Yes.
And so what pattern have we contributed to the marriage? And is that worth looking at and deciding, is this a pattern that I wanna keep,
Yeah.
that I'm doing? And what would life be like if I could let that go? how
Yeah.
could that affect our relationship? So
Yeah, and
I
healing helps you not even when if you end up getting divorced. I always think like I'm divorced, maybe I'll get remarried, I don't know. But anything I'm learning now will for sure help me.
oh,
And
yeah. Yeah, 100%. It helps us in every relationship,
yeah, with my
right?
kids. I mean, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
my
so
parents,
good.
my family, my friends. Yeah.
Yeah, so good. Well, this has been so fun, Jennifer. Thank you for
Oh, thanks,
listening with
Jill.
me and talking about this. So, just tell people where they can find you. I will put the links in the
Okay.
show notes, but just let people
Yeah.
know where they can find you.
Yeah, I have a weekly podcast as well, called Happily Even After with life coach Jen. And so every Monday I drop an episode and talk about different things. And then I have a website, lifecoachjen.com. And I'm on Instagram mostly at Happily Even After Coach. And so that's where you can find me. And I'm going to send it to Jill a link. You can take a quiz and it's called How Healed Are You? And you enter in your answers and it will spit out how healed you are. And so it's just a fun tool if you're wondering, like curious, like, wow, I thought I was healed. And actually, I have some work to do.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Seasons of Joy podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends and family. If you want to learn more about me or how to work with me, just visit my website, www.seasons-coaching.com, and have a joyful week.